What is up, everybody? Bryce here from Whitmix. I'm joined by Evan Kemper and Brandon Smith from 3Shape. Thank you for joining us today for our Friday or Hawaiian Shirt Friday edition, where we cover all of your topical, tropical topics. We are live from Key West, as you can see, and the weather is beautiful. Just kidding. We are actually live from Whitmix. But like I said, my name is Bryce. I'm joined by Evan Kemper, who is an applications engineer here at Whitmix. And we are fortunate enough to be also joined by Brandon Smith of 3Shape. Today's going to be a super awesome day. We're going to be talking about, or Brandon rather, is going to be talking about some of the new features coming in the new 2020 version of 3Shape. From what I've seen so far, it's a pretty big version. Some really awesome new features coming in. So we're super excited that Brandon's here. Thank you to everybody for joining us today. And I do want to mention before we kick this off, this is being recorded, so you can actually access this later after it's ended, either on our website where you registered, or we are also Facebook Living this. So it will be available on our Whitmix page on Facebook. So yeah, feel free to check those out. They are free, which is awesome. Like I said, I'm Bryce. And Evan, do you want to give everybody a little bit of a rundown on?
Yeah, so for anybody who hasn't been in one of these, I'm Evan Kemper. I'm an application engineer over here at Whitmix. So I do a lot of the same stuff Bryce does, but in addition, do some internal software development and specialty kind of 3D engineering designs for some of our occlusion and articulation stuff.
Awesome, cool. And again, we've got Brandon here with us. Brandon, you want to tell everybody who you are?
Yeah, my name's Brandon. I am a academy trainer with 3Shape. I've been there doing, lecturing, courses like this, some webinars, things. I've been there a little over a year now. Before that, I actually worked for Whitmix, doing kind of what Bryce does right now. And then I'm also a dental technician. Been around the industry now for going on 13 years. So I've been in it a while. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Cool, awesome, thanks, Brandon. So let's go ahead and start talking about the new 2020 version of 3Shape. Let's start, because I know this is the first question on everybody's mind. When is it coming out? And then let's, if you don't mind, let's just start going into some of the new features.
Yep. So the dental system software is supposed to release in June now. It's supposed to be around the middle of the month. I'm not exactly sure if the release is going to include all of the new features I'm going to cover, or if it's just going to be as it sits right now. Mm-hmm. There are some things I'm going to show, which I'll go ahead and share my screen.
So if I may ask really quick, Brandon, mm-hmm. So you're going to show us some features. If these aren't going to be included in this 2020 version, I assume there's going to be, because oftentimes with 3Shape, there are multiple updates, usually two or three throughout the year. So I assume that there maybe towards like third, fourth quarter, there's going to be another one that may have some features that you're showing us that may not be in this initial one.
Yeah, usually what happens is they'll release what they've got tested out and working properly in the first version. And then the second version that they come out with typically has the rest of the features. And then we usually do updates to fix bugs throughout the year. So okay. That's kind of how we structure things. Mm-hmm. Most of the things that we're going to find that I'm showing within the design software are going to be released in the first version. There are a few things that might not be, that are kind of outside the software a little bit, which I'll talk about those as I go through and discuss, what those features are.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and get started. So this is kind of what I want to cover throughout the course of the webinar here. Most of the things that might not be happening are going to be things like the most likely the custom Trios order form and the integration with lab management software might be the two things that might not show up in the very first version.
Okay.
But I'm going to go through those anyway. One of the new features that we're coming out with in 2020 is the ability to integrate with some lab management softwares. So there's 4 that we're going to start with. These may be slow released throughout the year, so they might not all show up in the very first version, but the plan is for Genmar, LabTrack, Magic Touch, and Viva Dental to have integration. So basically what this means is when a clinic sends a case to your lab through 3Shape Communicate, not only will it go into dental system, but it will also show up in the lab management software. And what this means is you'll be able to see the Trios prescription in your software, and also the scans, not the actual STLs, but images of those scans should go into the lab management software.
Okay.
This is all depending on whether or not the case is accepted. So it's not just going to show up in there if you don't want to accept it. You have to accept the case first from the Trios inbox.
That makes sense.
So the other thing that's coming out is the ability to customize the Trios offerings that each lab will accept. So right now, just by being a lab, you have access to every single indication if you're a clinic sending to that laboratory, no matter what the lab does at this point. So if you're a Crown and Bridge lab, there's a good chance that you've had at least one doctor that sent you a denture case, even though you can't do that denture case. So now what we're going to have is the ability for the order form to actually be customized to the lab. So they'll be able to choose what indications they can do as a laboratory, and then that's all that will show up when they're chosen as the send to lab in the Trios software. So what that kind of looks like, there's this piece of software that's kind of in the background here that's going to allow you to create these templates and materials. Another really cool feature about this is not only can you set up the indications that you as a lab can do, but you can also export your own material file now to Trios. So you'll be able to actually pull that in. So when a clinic connects with you, they'll have the ability to download your DME file and import that into Trios, so that when they connect with you and send you a case, they'll be choosing your actual materials instead of just generic ones. So there's no longer a conversion process when the case comes in from Trios. So that's kind of a neat feature. And then on the flip side, what it looks like on the clinic's end here is, so they'll go ahead and create a new case, and then they'll choose your lab as a send to. And now you can see here that based on what you set up as what you can do in your laboratory, that's all the clinic's going to have as options here. So you won't have dentures or splints or anything like that if you can't do those features. Another cool feature that's coming in 2020 is the ability now, we all know that if we've been in 3Shape for a while now, we've got tons of DME files that we've imported in. So when we drop down our material list, it can go on and on and on, and it's hard to find some of the materials that we don't use on a regular basis. So what you'll now be able to do is just start typing the name of the material into the material box, and it will give you anything that matches any part of that name in a little list. And then if you really are going to use that a lot, then you can click the little star icon and that will be a favorite. So it'll appear at the top of the list each time you choose it.
That's honestly a really nice little quality of life feature, because I mean, if you have a ton of like for example, like Argon has a ton of materials, and if you call them up and you want to get their DMEs, they're loading, 700 different alloys, and you're only going to use 1 or 2 more than, I mean, most labs use like a couple of them. Right. So, I mean, that's super helpful just to be able to favorite those and have them right at the top of the drop down list. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And then the other
Did we lose Brandon?
Looks like he might be lagging a little bit.
All right, bear with us, everyone. Let's see if we can get him reconnected. Text him. See if we can get him.
He's having some technical difficulties.
I'll see if we can get him reconnected back in. I'll call him. Hey, we lost you. Oh no. There you are.
All right. All right. Sorry about that. I lost internet.
Gotta love it. Not even Brandon Smith from 3Shape is immune to from technical difficulties. That's good to know. So all of you watching, take notes. You're not alone. It happens to all of us.
Yeah, it sure does.
And it obviously happens all the time during a live webinar, naturally.
That's the only time it happens, actually.
It's the opportune moment for the technical difficulty to strike.
Yeah. So where did you guys lose me at?
I mean, on the screen that we're on now.
Okay. So like I was saying, on the YouTube videos, you can access those directly from the design software, and it will take you directly to the video that corresponds with where you're at. So you're not having to search through all the videos to find what you need. So does anyone have any questions or anything like that about what I just covered? Otherwise, we're going to be going into some CAD features next.
We did have one question come in
Sure.
about if this will work on a D700. So I think just like any 3Shape software, assuming you're on a later model D700, then it should be compatible.
Yeah, I've not heard any indications that they're planning on disqualifying any of the old scanners. The scan server software does get an update in 2020, but it doesn't change any functionality, so it shouldn't have any effect on the different scanners that you can use.
It's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
And on that note, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to answer those. So we're going to be answering those as they come in. So feel free to shoot those questions our way, and we'll get them answered for you the best that we can.
Yep. So going into the CAD changes, a couple nice new features having to do with additional scans. The first one is you'll actually be able to morph to any of your additional scans now. So if you're doing a crown design and you've imported in multiple different additional scans, you can choose any one of those to morph to at this point. So that's a nice new feature. And then probably one of my favorite new features in the 2020 software is the new functionality in the additional scans toolbox. So now you can use it not only to save scans, but you can also use it to combine and save scans. And it's not just scans, but you can actually combine your design with your scan and save it. So if you want to use that for any other purpose, it's really nice if you're trying to combine the scan and save it as like a diagnostic wax up for later use. You can pull that in. And there are also some really cool techniques. If you have multiple scans that you need to scan in, but you don't have access to a way to scan those in, there's actually a pretty cool workflow that I'm working on that I can, I'm going to create a webinar on the show as to how you can scan in using your lab scanner, multiple additional scans all in one workflow. So
Awesome.
But yeah, that's a cool feature. So what you would do to save each piece of the additional scan is you just hold the control key down and click on all the scans in the main window, and then each thing that you save will show up in the little additional scans box, and then you can hit the save button when everything's in there.
So in a practical setting, what might somebody want to use that for?
It's really neat for larger cases. So let's say you have things that you need to combine into maybe like a bite. So if you have an upper and a lower relationship for a case, and there's no way to really align maybe a scan that doesn't have a lot of data to it, you can pull all those files in, and then at that point, anything you pull in as an additional scan can be aligned to anything.
Wow.
So you can align things, you can combine things now, and save them out. A lot of times what I use it for is if let's say I'm doing custom mounting jigs for certain, a good one is the Itero one that someone made that actually fits on a full frame articulator and positions the models in the same position. You can actually align all those here, bring in model built models and attach the Itero articulator hinge to it within additional scans and save it out as a model built case and print that.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's neat for bringing in, custom things and creating things out of it and creating bites. You can take an upper and lower, bring it in, and use the combine feature to save those out as a bite scan.
Yeah, nice.
You have a lot of cool
yeah, just gives the end user a little bit more freedom.
Yeah. So here's kind of an example of the where the morphing tool is and what you can do. So when you choose morph to additional scan, you'll be able to get an additional box below that allows you to choose the scan you want to morph to from the drop-down box, and then you have a smooth percentage, which allows you to smooth the edges. And then you can also, like I said, merge two scans together. So you can see I've got a pre-op scan and a prep arch scan here, and I selected them both and saved them over in the right-hand box. Oops, flip back. Another new feature, this is probably the coolest new feature in the 2020 version, is the new screw retain bridge functionality. So before, when you wanted to create preps on a screw retain bridge like this, it was a really long process where you had to create anatomical abutments and anatomical ponics, bridge everything together, design them, then you had to design tissue, you had to cut everything back. It was a very, very long workflow.
Yep.
So now the new workflow, you just create basically the screw retained crowns, the screw retained, full contour ponics, and add your gingiva. You no longer have to bridge anything together. You go through the whole workflow till the very end as if you were just designing the whole thing full contour. And then in the very last step, you get this. So I'm going to play this little video here. Whoops.
Whoa, this is awesome.
I guess it's not going to let me play the video, but I'll just talk about it. So you have three new options: keep anatomy, top cap, and cutback. So the keep anatomy is obviously just going to keep it all full contour. The top cap is going to allow you to get robotic control points here, just like if you were doing a robotic abutment.
That's nice.
So you'll be able to shape those that prep however you want. And then you'll see that use same settings for is an option there. So I can apply that same design to all the posteriors or all the anteriors or both. And then the nice thing about it is it protects the margin line, and you can actually use the control points on the margin line to lift the margin up and down. And
Wow.
It lifts it along the contour of the crown, the full contour design that you created.
That's
so
really
that's
nice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's really cool. And then you still have access to the cutback version, which works really great for anteriors. So you'll mark a cutout line on it, and then it'll reduce everything inside the cutout line, just like an anatomical abutment.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. That's going to make, you know, thimble bars so much easier. I mean, so
Here's my
so
video.
many fewer steps.
So this is kind of what it looks like. So now you can see that they can go in here and lift and pull certain aspects. This is the top cap option here.
Now, I know I'm getting greedy here, but I'm going to anyway. Is there any way to also export the crowns that you designed in full contour?
There is a workflow built around that. So what you do is you design it here, and then you'll save and close out, and then you'll do a copy and reuse CAD design, change everything over to the full contour crowns, and it actually keeps the design of your full contour crowns in there. And then you just adapt them to the preps on the bar.
That's awesome.
That's nice.
So you can see the anterior, it was done with the cutback option instead. So just another cool feature. A few additional changes. Some error messages now highlight the problematic area in order to help understand the issue better. So what this means is, I'm sure we've all been through a crown and bridge, and you know, it's maybe a full roundhouse, and it says that, you know, when we use the none connector, we might have that issue somewhere along the line where we have a tiny little space in between two teeth and it won't bridge them together. Now what the software actually does is it will highlight the two teeth that are having the issue in blue, so you can actually see where that connector issue is and correct it.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. Yeah, you know, one of the things, you know, from my perspective, having been both an end user and now on, you know, kind of my side of things now as a reseller, is some of the error messages are so incredibly vague, and you have no idea what they actually mean. So for some of those to be highlighted, that's gonna make life a lot easier for, I think, a lot of users.
Yeah, we took the idea from our RPD design module, where when you have an issue with the spline highlights in the area where it needs to. So that's kind of where we got the idea from.
Nice. That's awesome.
Next kind of additional change is abutment design steps become faster, especially when working with multiple implants. It's just the processing times have been sped up a little bit to account for reloading and things like that. And then also we've applied that same logic to the connectors build speeds. So those have been kind of optimized and increased a little bit.
Okay, cool.
So next new changes are coming with full dentures. Impression scans creation has been improved. So we've made some changes to the impression scanning. There was a bug in the 19 software where when you sculpted on the scans in the prepare step, if you use the add tool, it actually subtracted, and you use the subtract tool, it actually added. That's been fixed in 2020. We've got some copy denture improvements, the new Gingiva, which I'll go into that a little bit.
Love that name.
Gingiva.
Yeah. The software now gives you a warning for dentures. So if say you're using the base with design teeth option and you choose a library that does not allow you to design your own teeth, you'll actually get a warning when you go to leave the Smile Composer step to go forward, saying that you cannot produce those teeth locally. So that's something new. Before, it didn't give you any kind of warning. It would just take you all the way through. Then you'd go to produce your STLs and just not get STLs of the teeth. So that's a new warning that's been in there. And then the last thing is tissue stops can now be added to custom trays using the wax knife tool.
What?
Finally.
So that's a pretty cool feature.
Yeah.
and it's really simple to do. You just, in that very last step, you just grab your wax knife tool. So there's a little icon underneath the wax knife tools that gives you to block out wax or to the prep arch. You just select which one you want, and then you just add, and it stops you right at the surface of whichever one you chose.
So it's probably pretty similar to adding tissue stops in the RPD design.
It's not like that. So with the tissue stops and RPD design, you just click a spot and it places it.
Right.
This, you're actually using the wax knife tool to sculpt it in. So you can make it as big or as small as you want.
Okay, makes sense.
So copy denture improvements, the margin line calculations are now faster and a little bit better done. They typically now come in the right positions. I know in the past, sometimes you'd have those 1 or 2 teeth where it'd be all the way up at the incisal edge, then you'd have to redraw it yourself. So that's been improved. And now you can do copy denture with digital impressions. So if the clinic wants to scan the denture there, they can scan it and send it to you, and you can bring that in and do the copy denture workflow.
Nice.
And now the Gingivator. So this is a really cool feature. So before, when you did dentures, you would get that really generic looking, just pretty awful gingiva design that you would have to spend a lot of time sculpting. Now you have a better initial proposal. So there are 3 options here: delicate, natural, and intense. And then below each of those options, you have different sliders where you can adjust different features. So basically, when you leave the step, your gingiva is almost pretty much completely designed for you. You still have a sculpt step afterwards, just like before, where you can adjust it. But for the most part, you get nicer gingiva aesthetics. So you can see here's the natural, and then here's the intense. So you have 3 default options here. And then again, you can adjust each individual option as you want. And if you're really a big fan of the original Gingivator, if you check the box that says use old Gingiva builder, it will use the original Gingiva. There is some nice uses for the old Gingiva builder. It's nice and smooth. So if you're going to layer some composite characterization over it, it's a good option to choose rather than having all this nice defined detail when you're not really going to need it. Another cool thing from Ivoclar is these new discs that work with their PM7 mills. So they basically have the tooth shading and the gingiva built into the disc. And their camming software uses special algorithms to position your denture for you, so that when it mills out a 1-piece denture that has tooth shading and gingiva shading built into it.
Solid.
Yeah. And it's exclusive to dental systems, so there's no other CAD software out there, no exoCADs or anything that can actually do this right now.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So it's a really cool feature. I'm not sure what the costs on the discs are, but you can always check with Ivoclar and get that information. One thing that's going to be new in 2020 also, so on the clinical side, we've come out with a lot of trusted connections for our mills for the chair side. So now we're going to start doing that on the clinical or on the lab side as well. So what that means is we're probably going to be bringing back at some point the Cambridge software in some fashion, where you'll be able to nest all of your units into a disc in that software and then send it over to be milled. So if you're, cool. Yeah, so you can do everything from one workflow. Next thing is some new model builder features, which I think are pretty cool. So if you're designing, new, wax ups or things like that, you're going to have new workflows within the model build software. You'll notice that the the whole interface has changed a little bit. It looks more similar to dental system design software, where you have the toolbar on the right-hand side. You no longer have the file button up at the top left, and we've changed out the virtual trim settings and things like that are now in the gear setting over there on the right-hand side. So it's just kind of a little overhaul here to make it look a little nicer. But one cool thing that was added is the tooth extraction tool is now in Model Builder. So if you're doing a case where you're not going into design and you're just building models and you need to extract teeth, it's now in the sculpt steps. So you'll find it either in the prepare step here in the add remove materials, or also in the final sculpt step at the end. You can do it there as well. Then you also have the combine with design step. So this is kind of cool. This is basically what a lot of people take their virtual wax ups and things into Mesh Mixer to do. It's now part of the Model Builder functionality. So you have three options. First, you can not change the model at all. So that's going to be like the original functionality where it just does nothing to the model, just model builds it like normal. Then you have the second option down is combine with design or combine with model. So it's going to take whatever you designed and make it part of the model. And then below that, you have subtract design from model. So this would be really handy for like implant cases where you're designing a large overly designed crown where you have to contour the tissue. It'll actually contour the tissue for you, but it protects the margin area.
Wow, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah. And it's really nice for abutments. So here's kind of the subtracting the design from the model. That's what that feature kind of looks like. And then the next cool feature is with abutments, and you can actually, so before what you had to do was you had to purchase analogs that fit down into the printed models. Now, if you're designing like a custom abutment, you can merge that with the model, and then you can make a removable die of that abutment design. So you no longer really need those analogs.
Nice.
Nice. That's sweet.
So that's a new feature. So you can see that drop down there, merge the design with the model. So that'll merge it, and then you just mark a margin on it just like a normal crown case. The nice thing about it though is if, let's say you're pushing the tissue with your abutment design, so you're gonna have tissue directly above your collars. Before, what it would do is it would actually cut off your collar on your abutment design when you tried to do this. Now what it does is it removes everything above the collar, directly above it. So it gives you a nice, basically path down to the collar.
Awesome. That's really cool.
Another new feature with our standard copy. So when you actually use a standard copy of a case now, instead of it going back to a scanned status, it actually matches the status of the original case. So if you designed a case and you standard copy it, it's going to be design status with everything there, the whole design and everything like that.
Beautiful. Hey, you know, one other thing I noticed in Model Builder, because you know, we have the beta version of it that we're testing as resellers. One other thing that I noticed is the issue, you know, one really prevalent issue is trimming third-party intraoral scans. So where, you know, if you tried to clean up the scan in Model Builder and trim it, a lot of times it would like just leave a tiny sliver of data and delete everything else. Just a weird kind of like little bug in the software. From everything that I've noticed, that's fixed. Was that an intentional like hot fix or an intentional fix in Model Builder?
We did optimize it, but the problem that we have is we're kind of at the mercy of the third-party scanners that create the scan. There's a lot of scanners out there where they're not necessarily bad scanners, but they have a bad conversion process when they create their STLs, which causes a lot of issues in the scan. Now, we kind of did two things to fix this. We optimized it in the background of the software to make it better, but we also, in actually the 2019 version, we added the refined scan step within the design so that it could fix all of those errors ahead of time.
Okay.
So those are the two main options that you have to fix those third-party scans. What I've noticed between the two new features, I really haven't seen any issues with any scans, and I've imported in some really poor quality scans to try it out. So yeah, that seems to be fixed.
Yeah.
Some new features coming to Dental Manager and the control panel. The 3Shape Communicate processing is fully moved to the service. It does not interrupt work in Dental Manager anymore and allows to receive cases faster without losing information. So this is kind of something in the background that when you go to refresh or update with 3Shape Communicate, you can now do that in the background instead of having to sit there and wait for it to finish. New filter enables easy browsing for materials in the order form. This is something I already went over. Materials export has actually been sped up. So when you're exporting your own DMEs, that process should be faster now. The installer has been simplified. So it's a lot of the drop-down boxes that were open when you go into a custom install have been minimized that don't really apply. So it's going to be a little bit more simplified if you're a newer installer trying to do those. We now have a new feature in the control panel called the cleanup page. So those options where you can automatically delete orders and automatically close orders have been moved to this page. And then we've added a whole bunch of different additional options there. Some of them clean up, like they'll get rid of the miscellaneous scans folder, the screenshots folder over a certain amount of time, things like that. So it cleans up the orders and gets rid of the data that you no longer need.
Nice.
And then materials have new validations and restrictions that deliver better control. So you can actually set up better validation processes for your regular materials, such as your zirconia, your Emax, so that if you have a large lab and you have multiple designers, you have more control over whether or not they're actually following your minimum thicknesses and margin thicknesses and things like that. So it'll work similar to the validation process on custom abutments. When you send those to a manufacturer, you'll get stopped and not able to go on until you go back and fix the issue. So all this stuff, originally it was supposed to be May, but with COVID, it's been pushed back now to June. So a lot of this stuff should be coming in June. If there's, the only thing that would push this back is if there's any major bugs or issues that we find with the beta tests. So far, I haven't really found anything in the latest version that's been a major issue.
Yeah, I haven't found anything either.
Same.
I've used it a decent amount. Evan's used it quite a bit. And I was testing out specifically some of the new features, copy denture and model builder specifically. I have yet to find any problems with it. So
Yeah.
it's definitely looking promising. And you know, this is, I would say this is probably one of the biggest updates that I can remember. I mean, there are some, the thimble bar, like the hybrid workflow that you guys are releasing. I mean, that's a huge deal. You know how, I mean, end users that are doing those, they know how difficult it has been sometimes in the past to get through like a thimble bar. I mean, it's not easy. I mean, it takes a lot of time. That new workflow is going to significantly speed up that process. I mean, by like probably threefold. So that's super awesome.
Yeah. So that's pretty much all I have. Are there any questions?
No questions. I'm checking both the Zoom meeting and Facebook. So anybody on either platform that has any questions, please get those in. We still have some time, so if anybody wants, well, if you want to talk about anything, you want to talk about Key West, you know,
Yeah.
let's talk about that. Anything else to talk about? Here's one. Can you make guards with this software? From Fred. Well, what kind of guards are we talking
Talking
about?
about mouth guards.
Like mouth guards, like sports guards? Let's give him a sec to respond. TMJ.
So I would say no to that because you have to have FDA approval to do that within a software, and we don't have a specific workflow to create TMJ devices. So I would say no. Is it capable of doing it? Yes, but that's something, like I said, that you have to have regulatory for, which we do not have regulatory for that.
Good question. Awesome.
Yep.
Get those questions in everybody. Let's wait a couple minutes here. If anybody has any more. Okay, here's one. On a different topic, does Brandon know when there is FDA clearance for Trios implant crown design?
We are still waiting on that. That was supposed to come out last year, and the FDA has kind of been dragging their feet on that. So we're kind of at their mercy at this point.
Okay, cool. Here's a question. This is a very elementary question, but I would like to know the difference between cement gap and extra cement gap. So that's actually a really good question that we get quite a bit because the terminology is kind of not what you would expect it to be. So one thing that 3Shape did very expertly when they engineered the cement gap settings was they tried to mimic how you would prepare a die analog. So when we're talking about preparing a stone die, what are the things you're doing? You're going to draw your margin on with some kind of pencil. You're going to apply a cement or a die spacer, like a paint, one, maybe two layers. You're going to let that dry. Then you're going to apply your die hardener. So 3Shape basically does the same thing. So the extra cement gap is basically your die spacer, so your paint on your stone die. So that's why that number by default is higher. I think by default it's either 0.4 or 0.04 or 0.05, so 40 or 50 microns. That's basically your die spacer. And then the cement gap is basically everything below the gap below your die spacer, or the below your extra cement gap, and that's usually set to about 10 microns. Which is basically just allowing for the die hardener that you would paint on a regular stone die. So it's kind of mimicking that same analog process that you go through when you're prepping a stone die. So extra cement gap is your die spacer. Cement gap is basically your die hardener. That's the best way that I know to explain it.
And you can control those features. If you want more cement gap up the sidewalls, then you'll adjust that distance to margin line to be a higher value. So that creates it higher up the sidewalls. So if you want more of an intimate fit, a little higher up, you can do that.
Yep. That was a very good question. We have another one. Will 3Shape 2020 automatically generate STL files at the end without having to push your F7 key?
Yes. So this is kind of a tricky question. It has to do with the way that the material is set up in your software. So when you choose a material, the manufacturer has to appear as your dongle number, or if you've changed that number in your site settings, whatever you've changed it to has to appear in the manufacturer for that to automatically generate. If it's an external company, it will not automatically generate the STLs for you. That's when you would have to F7.
Yeah, great question.
And just to clarify or add to that, that is functionality that's been available for a long time.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just, it's all about the configuration.
Yep. So was that from Jeremy? Jeremy, if we are your reseller, give us a call. We'll take care of that for you. More than happy to do that. If we're not your reseller, first of all, shame on you. So Just kidding. Second of all, give them a call. Hopefully they'll be able to figure it out for you. But yeah. Let's see, what else? Can you re-explain the new workflow for abutments, please?
As far as from a digital impression through Model Builder, or are you talking about the implant bar workflow that I showed?
Yeah, let's see if they can specify. That is from anonymous attendee. So Mr. Anonymous or Mrs. Anonymous, please specify. So through Model Builder. So I think they're talking about how you don't need the digital analogs anymore.
Yeah. So you can actually, I was going to show this if we didn't have any questions. So you can see here, I have an abutment design here on a digital impression that I designed. So over here on the left, I have this merge abutments with the model. So when I select that, it's actually going to create a, basically merge it as part of the model. So then when I select OK here and move forward, now what it's going to have me do is actually trim it as if it were a prep tooth on the model. So it follows that workflow. So I'll mark my cutout line, which should be automated based on the placement of the collar. And then it will actually remove the material, which you can see here, above the collar. So now I just go through the normal workflow. So if I want to edit the cutout here, I can come in here and certainly mark it where I want it to be. Just like before, I can add my neighbors. And then when I move forward, it's going to treat this just like a normal die. So when I generate the die here, it gives me the die pin on the bottom. And then I have the ability to now go through here and move it to where I want it. And then when I go next here, it's going to take me into my articulator interface, just like normal. Get rid of this so I can see it a little easier. And then when I go through here, it'll take me to the sculpt step. And then after this step, it's going to take me to the end where I'll be able to see all the pieces. And it'll show that it's given me a die of the abutment there instead of having to have that lab analog in place.
You know, I think that's actually going to help people out a lot. Because one thing that I've run into is like different digital analogs from different companies may be machined with different tolerances. Mm-hmm. Therefore, it can be a little tricky to make sure your digital analogs are going to fit. Even if you're printing consistently every single time out of your 3D printer, such as the Asiga Max, shameless plug. You know, if you different manufacturers are not consistent, then yeah, what good is it? So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and what I've found is the only real great way to do those analogs and different die settings and things like that is you know, going into the materials and creating a separate model material for every different application. So if you're sending your one analog that you're using is like the ELOS, you'll have an ELOS model build. And then another one, if you're using the Core 3D scan flags and analogs, you can set another one up for that. That's really the only great way to adjust it to where you never have to adjust those settings at all.
And that's honestly, that's a lot of work. I mean, that takes time because I mean, you've got to do it through several cases from each manufacturer to make sure that, first of all, even their machining is consistent, and then you've got to hone in on, like, you know, the right offset. I mean, so that's a lot of work. So this is pretty sweet for yeah.
This is another cool feature that I forgot to mention. Even if you merge it with the model, you still can create a removable tissue that you can print separately.
Yeah. Hey, here's a question for you, Brandon.
Sure.
One thing that I've had difficulty with in the past is, like, let's say you're doing like a full arch fixed hybrid, creating one piece of removable gingiva on the whole arch. I've had issues with that in the past. Have you Do you have any either tips in 2019 to do it better, or if it's a known issue, has it been fixed in 2020?
By creating the removable gingiva, what exactly do you mean?
Like the removable soft tissue on the like on your 3D printed models. Like on a full arch, I've had issues in the past keeping that as one piece successfully.
So let me go back to the soft tissue here. So I'm going to turn off my color so we can see it. So now one of the features that you can actually do here is you can move these planes pretty much anywhere you want. So if you've got a full arch with multiple implants, you can move these planes way back to the back of the model.
Mm-hmm.
And then now you'll have a one-piece tissue for the whole thing instead
Yeah.
of
Yeah, and you know, sometimes when I've tried that in the past, there have been limitations on rotating, rotating those planes. It could only let me rotate it so far, and I couldn't get all the way to the back.
Yeah, this particular feature right here is new to 2020. So it's not going to be available in 19, but it will allow you to do a full arch tissue piece instead of having to
Sweet.
do it per implant site.
I like it.
It will start off in the initial implant site. You just need to widen it out to where you want it.
I like it. I like it a lot. Let's see. Can you talk a little more on the all-in-one denture disc and how that works? Honestly, I I don't know a whole lot about it. I mean, I saw some of it in Chicago. I haven't really looked into it a whole lot. Brandon, I mean, do you know? I know it's the Ivotion from Ivoclar, but I don't. I mean, the magic's really going to happen in the CAM software. Really, I mean.
Yeah,
That's where
it's something. If you want more specifics on that, you would want to get with your Ivoclar rep and ask them about that. We don't really have a whole lot of information on that, just because all our software is going to do again is just produce the STL. Like Bryce said, the magic does happen in their CAM software, and like I said, it is specific to their mill, so you have to have the PM7 to be able to do it.
Yep. All right. Last call. Closing time.
Let's see, I think somebody put one in the chat. Let's see, can we create models for virtual preps on the provisional cases coming from trios? So I think what they're trying to find out is, with the additions in Model Builder and new functionality, can we take what you would normally have, those virtual preps when you do the diagnostic or shell temporary workflow, and turn that into a printable model with just the preps?
No. The reasoning that we have not implemented that is because it's actually not an FDA approved process. Everything we do within the software is approved by the FDA as a regulated process. So what we've done instead is we've created a completely virtual workflow for temporaries, where not only can you create the temporaries, but you can also create a positioning guide that goes along with those shell temporaries. So all you have to do is take them to the mouth and realign them and use the positioning guide to fit those in. So it's just something that you can add there. Now, the reason that the FDA won't allow us to do that is because then we're basically giving the clinic a model of preps, which is then lab technicians doing dentistry, which is not allowed.
Reduction guide. Cool. That'd be fun. I mean, that'd be neat if you could, though, but I get why you can't.
Yep.
So don't get mad at 3Shape. It's not their fault. So I'm sure they would love to add it if they could.
Yeah.
All right. Get those last ones in. We need to, you know what we need to do? We need to start playing closing time at the end.
Yeah.
It's like a 2-minute warning, closing time. Except we need to come up with our own lyrics. So closing time. One last call for webinar questions. So finish your coffee and I don't know.
So
finish your whatever.
This is why we're not
Yeah.
songwriters.
going back to
And,
this
yeah.
implant here, you can see here that now I've got my removable tissue and a die of the abutment in place that fits in the model. So this is kind of that new workflow that I was talking about.
Very nice.
Yeah, I really like that, dude. That's a pretty sweet addition. I mean, really, Model Builder is basically totally overhauled, really. I mean, a couple of the steps are kind of similar, but seems like y'all slicked it up a lot, which I really like.
It was due,
Yeah.
due for an update.
No doubt. All right, cool. Looks like, Brand, do you have anything else? I don't see any more questions coming in.
No, I think that was pretty much it.
Sweet. Awesome. Cool. So once again, everybody, first of all, thanks for joining us today. I know this was one that a lot of people were interested in. So super grateful that everybody took the time out of their Friday to join us. Once again, this was recorded. So you can either access that on our website where you registered, or you can access it on our Facebook page. So this did go out Facebook Live, and in the future, feel free to join us on Facebook Live if that's easier for you. We have both platforms now. So thank you, everybody. I think next week, Evan, what do we have? What are we doing next week?
So next week is going to be all about surgical guide design in 3Shape Implant Studio, along with, so the Monday is going to be tooth-borne guides, and on the 20th, on Wednesday, that's going to be the more advanced, tissue-borne guides, and then on Friday will be printing surgical guides and kind of tips and tricks there. So all 3 sessions are going to be myself and Corey. So definitely come check us out next week for 3Shape Implant Studio.
Sweet. I like it. Awesome. Yeah, we'd love for everybody to join us, either register on our website or check out Facebook Live. Special thanks to Brandon for joining us today. It's always good to talk to you, buddy. And we're all super excited for these new 2020 features. So I get about 17 people a day asking when it's going to come out. So it's definitely highly anticipated. So thanks, everybody. Talk to you on Monday, hopefully. And I hope everybody has an awesome weekend.
Yeah, you too.